Hey guys, okay, so I talked last week on Instagram stories about doing an editing PDF for you. I'm going to do a video instead. I feel like I learn a lot better when I'm able to watch someone work instead of just reading words on paper or on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and do a video instead. Since this is free, we're not going to go all out. You may hear puppy walking upstairs. I'm down in the basement. The babies are up, so who knows what kind of crazy stuff you'll hear. But I did want to get this to you guys today. I had a couple other issues recording, so we're going to give this a shot. All right, so I'm going to do two different images. I'm going to do this one of Lindsay and Brandon out in Rocky Mountain National Park. The exposure is straight out of cameras, spot on. I've blown a little bit of the highlights out here just because of the sky and the sun had just disappeared. So I'm going to do this one where I'm starting with a pretty easy palette or image to work with. There's not a whole ton of overexposure, underexposure that I need corrected. And I'm also going to do this image without any presets, so you can see how easy it is to work without them, at least for my editing style. I'm going to also do a second image that's going to need a little bit more work. I am going to use a preset on that image so that you can see how, how to work with a preset. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we start editing there, my feelings on presets and all that good stuff. But let's start here with this one. So overall, it's a little flat. Raw, of course, colors are less saturated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the exposure just a little bit. I'm going to watch also my histogram here to make sure, you can see I just went over, you can see where the blown highlights are right up there. Just going to watch it a little bit. I don't pay 100% attention to it. I usually go more with my personal preferences. So, okay, so I've increased the exposure a little bit. I'm going to increase the contrast. I really like contrast in my images. Probably not go quite that far. I'll come down just to about 60. I'm going to take my highlights down a smidge. I'm going to see what it does to the mountains and go from there. Next, I'm going to work with the dehaze slider. I really love the dehaze slider. Even if there's not a ton of haze in my images, I'll show you. It gives it a little bit more richness and increase, and it doesn't work with every single image. Sometimes it just doesn't look right. Next up, I am going to increase my warmth. So I can do that here on the white balance just by going up here with the yellows. I can also do it with the dropper. So I'm going to double click temp just to bring it back down to what it was straight out of camera, or what the settings were in camera. I can click this eyedropper. I can find a very neutral spot in a white or gray and see what it does there. So I just clicked there, and obviously that's a little bit too warm, so I'll bring it down just a little bit. Sometimes it works great for correction, sometimes not so much. But I just bought an Expo disc, and it's a game changer. I didn't shoot this session with an Expo disc, but buy yourself an Expo disc. It was like $50, and it's changed white balance for me for the better. It's been huge. So I have Corinne Combs to thank for that if you ever follow along with her. Anyways, she's the reason why I bought it. And okay, so here I am with this image. It's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and go back to the straight out of camera so you can see what these simple adjustments can do to an image. So that's straight out of camera, and those are the adjustments I've made so far. All right, next up, I am going to go down to my HSL color tab. I'm going to take my greens. I like the greens in my images. I know right now there's kind of some trendy things going on with the muted green. So if I pull, you can get rid of them. It's kind of, it's just a preference. But I really like saturated greens. You have to be a little bit careful because sometimes they have green in their clothes. It can be too much. So I just watch for those. I'll kind of mess around with the luminance as well. This is going to be how dark or bright my greens are. So if I pull it all the way down, it goes up a little. You can see that there. So I'm not going to do a whole lot to that. It doesn't make too much of a change. All right. And next up, I'm going to show you one of my absolute favorite tools in Lightroom. I'm going to go to the radial filter. It's going to be this little icon right here. And I'm going to make a little circle around my subject. What I want is a richer, darker background without it affecting Lindsay and Brandon. So I'm going to select this radial filter. I'm going to bring it down, the exposure of it down, not that much. Kind of play with it to where I like it. Increase the contrast a little bit. Maybe even mess around with the clarity or the dehaze. I don't know. We'll see. That's too much. So I'm just going to keep double click dehaze and double click clarity to bring them back up to 0. So here's my thoughts with the radial filter. Sometimes, well, a lot of the time, if you go too extreme with these, you're going to get a little halo around your subjects. To avoid that, I like to, if it's super noticeable, I will bring the radial filter out just to give a little bit more blending, so you can see that it's not quite so, let's see, I'll show you. We go back in, it can start to look, it's not terrible in this image. In the next image I edit, I'll show you an example of where it can really look like they're halos, because there is another way to use radial masks that I'll show you in the next image we edit. But for me, I really like to bring them out to give a little bit of blending to it, so it's not quite so obvious. So I'm going to click done, and this is going to be my Lightroom edit. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export it to Photoshop. So I'm going to hit Command E in Lightroom, and it's going to bring it up in Photoshop. All right, so I've opened it in Photoshop. Quick note, the dog has come downstairs, so you may hear some barking, maybe not, but he's wandering around down here, so you might hear him. Anyways, okay, so I've pulled it into Photoshop. The next thing I'm going to do is, so I created an action set that I just didn't have the time to market, so I never really sold them, or I didn't sell very many of them, but one action that I created that I use on 99.9% of my images is this little kicker action right here. It's just a small little pop. I'll show you what it does, and I'll kind of explain what the action does and kind of break it down a little bit. So as you can see, we went from before to after. It gives my images that, just the look that I really love. And yes, I like this in Photoshop because I'll show you. So Lightroom doesn't have, in my opinion, the best curves and levels adjustment options. They're just not as tweakable or user-friendly, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain to make these tiny adjustments. I'm going to show you what this action consists of. It's got, right here, it's got a curves adjustment, a brightness contrast adjustment, which, yes, of course, is super easy to do in Lightroom, but this is just part of the action here in Photoshop. And then a levels adjustment. So let's go back to the curves adjustment. So all it's really done is I've brightened the curves up a little bit. I feel like in Photoshop you can get really, really particular on the curves adjustments much better than you can in Lightroom. So it's just giving it a little bit of pop, a little bit of a contrast bump, and then my levels where I bring the blacks down. So I never go in and edit these. If I feel like it's too much, I will take the whole action layer and decrease it if I feel like I need to. But I'm just going to bring it down to 75%. So there's a little before and after. So next up, I flatten my image. So I'm going to go to Layer. I'm going to flatten it. And then I am going to duplicate my layer, so I can hit Command J, or I can go Layer, Duplicate Layer right there. And I'm going to run portraiture on her skin. Does she need it? Absolutely not. But I like it. It's part of my style. So I do it on skin no matter what. So we're going to go filter, portraiture, and of course this is an additional plugin you have to purchase if you want it. I'm going to take the little eyedropper. I'm going to select her skin. Then I'm going to go over here and make sure it's down to normal because she's so far away from the camera. If I was to do strong, her skin would just be very muddy looking, very unrealistic looking. When I hit OK. And next what I'm going to do is, well, here, I'll show you. So we'll turn, if you watch while I toggle this on and off, you can see down here in the grass, let's do it again, that it blurs it together. I don't like that. So I'm going to add a layer mask right here. It's this little icon down here. I'm going to select the layer mask, make sure my brush, then I'm going to select my brush and make sure it's on black. I'm going to go to 100% opacity so it completely erases it. And I'm going to erase it off the grass. And then I'm also going to erase it off or brush it off of his skin because men don't need their skin smooth. I like the roughness of and keeping it true to them. All right, so that's what I've done. I'm going to go in, I'm going to layer, I'll flatten it again. And then next up, I'm going to sharpen it. This is the way I have sharpened images forever. So, I mean, I don't know if it's the right way, but it's worked for me. I go to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. I use the dialog box pops up, and I'm just going to click on her eye and just increase it. I really like sharp images, maybe too much, but yeah, so that's, I mean, really the most I'm going to do. Actually, here's a little of my OCD. I do this quite a bit. I'm going to take the patch tool. Let me show you. So I'm going to take this patch tool right here. If it looks like something different on your screen, you just hold it down, go down to patch. It could be a spot healing brush, anything like that. So patch tool, I'm going to select this and I'm going to drag it over here just to clean it up a little bit. Yeah, so that's as quick and easy. I mean, it's pretty simple, pretty fast. It takes me like 4 or 5 minutes when I'm not talking about it, so it's very quick and easy. All right, so here's my before and my after. Super easy, super quick. As long as I'm starting out with a good straight out of camera image, I feel like it takes me just a couple minutes to get a good edit to an image. But this is the before and after, just starting, no presets, anything like that. Next up, we're gonna talk about using presets, which ones I love, how I use them, how I tweak them. All right, so next up is this image of one of my twins, Theo. We went up to Kenosha Pass and did our own family photos, which I have not touched because it's busy season, but I'm going to show you this one. I'm going to use a preset. Oh, see, there's the dog. So some of my favorite presets, I have bought way too many. Let's bring these down. Okay, so some of my favorite presets are going to be the small presets. I believe he changed the company name to Soulmates preset, but if you just Google or even get on Facebook and type in SMAL presets, you'll see stuff pop up. Hands down, favorite presets. Next up are going to be these Summit presets. They are from Tribe Arca. I don't even know how to say it, but if you're a member of the, here comes the dog again. If you're a member of the Looks Like Film group, I believe it's their presets that they sell. I think it all ties together with the SEO. I'm not 100% sure, but if you really want to know, just message me and I can send you a link to them. So anyways, I love presets. I don't think they're a way of cheating. I use them on a lot of my images, but here's the thing. I never just click a preset and just leave it. It's not a one check thing where it's just one and done. One click, you're done. That's not how it works. Everybody's images are different. They're lit different. Style you're going for is different. All that good stuff. So let's go ahead and start. Let's see. Let's put, well, here's the other thing too. So I'm going to bring up the small presets that I use. Let me try this again. When I use a preset over and over again and I notice myself making the same changes to that preset, I go in and do those small changes and then reset, make my own preset of that preset that's with those changes that I find myself making. And whenever you do that, you can, like, say it's this one right here and I've made all the changes I need. You can right click it or control click and you can do update with current settings and it will adjust to whatever is going on over here. It'll overwrite your preset. You have to be careful doing that. For me, I'll show you. So let's put, what I did was, I'm going to start with this one. This is the one I like. What I've done with a lot of the small presets is I've come over here to clarity, brought it up to 0, and then I've come down and removed the grain. And then that's when I went in and I right clicked or control clicked the preset and said, update with current settings. So that's where I'm at with that. That's how it changed it. And that saves me a couple extra steps. So obviously this is not what I want my image to look like. It's a great starting point though. I love the tones and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I don't know if you can hear the babies being crazy upstairs, but sorry if you do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to, let's see, first, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the radial filter. Let's do the other way that I use it. So I'm going to draw over him. James is mad if you can hear him. And I'm going to, so when I was making adjustments earlier in the other image, it was affecting everything on the outside of the circle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invert it. So I'm going to, it's going to affect everything on the inside. So I'm really working just with Theo. So I'm going to brighten him up. Maybe a little less. And bring him up. So when I was talking earlier about it kind of creating a halo over them, this is where you really see it more, is when you do inverted stuff. And you can adjust that halo by messing with the feather. So if you pull feather all the way down, it's going to give you a really hard line. You can see over here in the preview that hard line, or you can make it all the way up to 100 where it's going to be softer, but the changes are going to be less on. I mean, you have to really make that radial filter bigger. So I'm going to keep it at 50. So we're just going to double click it. It'll bring it back down to 50. And then I'm going to bring, I'm really going to bring the radial filter edge to edge to make it feel more like it's a pocket of light that he's in versus a very obvious adjustment just to him. So if you look over here, you can, seeing that smaller image really helps me notice if anything is too strong. So I'm going to do that. So it looks more like a pocket of light. I'm going to bring it down on him just a little bit. Maybe increase. That's too much. We'll come down. Again, a lot of this is trial and error. All right, so I'm going to hit done. Next up, I'm going to take this tool, radial or graduated filter. I don't know, maybe that's what it's called, but it's like the gradient filter on in Lightroom, in Photoshop. So I want to make the sky a little bit darker and bring out those blues because obviously it's way blown out over here. So, because we were messing around in the shadows and this crazy guy was trying to throw himself off that hill. So, it was kind of a quick shot where I didn't quite nail exposure how I wanted to. Anyways, I'm going to darken the sky a little bit. Let's see how far I can get it without it starting to look weird. So here's what I'm seeing up here is I look at this smaller image quite a bit just to see, like I said, if there's something that's too much. It really stands out in the smaller image. Maybe pull this down a little bit. And that looks good to me. So I'm going to hit done. Next up, I'm going to go in the preset has already made these adjustments, and I'm going to go in and tweak them a little bit more again, like I said. So I like my images with higher contrast. I'm going to increase that just a smidge. If I get too crazy, his skin is going to start to look not quite right. Let's see. Let's see what the dehaze does. It may not, yeah, it doesn't really quite work as well on this image. So I'm going to double click dehaze to bring it back. And then again, I'm going to go down to my HSL color. This is such an incredible tool, and just play around with it for a little while with the colors, see what changes it makes. I feel like I use it on quite a bit. So there's not a whole lot of green in here, but I am going to increase it because I want to bring, watch, I'll increase it. I want to bring these greens in the little weeds that are back in the evergreens and the trees back there. So, and increasing this is going to really do that. And then next up, I'm going to go to the yellows. This was fall on Kenosha Pass. The aspens were insane. So I want to bring those yellows back up a little bit. Just a smidge. Perfect. I am going, let's see. Everything else really looks good. So I'm going to pull this into Photoshop. Can you hear that baby running around up there? Oh, that other image is still up. It's okay. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I am going to go back up to this tool that we had just used and go to Spot Healing Brush. And I'm going to clean off Theo's shirt because he was refusing to get into the stroller and rolling around in the grass because he was mad. He didn't want the fun to end. So we're going to clean up just a little bit of these. I'm not going to go and get all of them off of his pants because I feel like they just stick out quite a bit on his shirt because of the contrasting tones. Get that guy. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I'm going to zoom back out. I don't really ever, let's see. All right, so next up I'm going to do again, 99.9% of my images have this little action. So that looks awesome to me, except these corners are a little bit too dark. So I'm going to go and use this button here. I'm going to add a layer mask. I'm going to hit B to shortcut to my brush tool, or just go over here and hit brush tool. I'm going to take my opacity of my brush to 50%. Now I can do that by hitting the 5 on my keyboard, or I can go up here and change it. So 49 is close enough to 50. I'm going to go through, just lighten that up a little bit. You can see the tiny little changes it makes because I just feel like that was a little bit too dark. So there we go. That's better to me. I'm going to flatten my image because I don't know why. I just do. It drives Ted crazy. Flatten. Now I can go in and try to darken up the background, but I don't know. Let's give it a go. So I'm going to go to my curves layer, click curves. I'm really going to pull from the midtones and bring them down. You have to be careful because you can start to get some banding up here with the sky, and I can show you how to fix that, or at least how I fix it. But we'll see. I don't know if I really want it that dark. Okay, so I'm going to go in. Let's just start. I'll show you kind of if I was. So I pulled it down. I'm going to take my brush again, but this time I'm going to do it at 100% opacity. So I can click 0 on my keyboard to bring my brush opacity to 100, or just come up here and slide. So I'm going to take this off Theo. increase my brush size. So if I want to make my brush bigger or smaller, if on your keyboard next to P you have these brackets, and those will make your brushes bigger or smaller, or you can go in to here and adjust it from there. It's just 10 times easier to adjust it from those little brackets by your P key on your keyboard. I'm going to go quite a bit bigger, and then I'm going to lower my opacity of my brush down to 30%. So again, hit the 3 key, or I can come up here and go 30. So I'm going to get that little light pocket back in there. I'm also going to take it off the edges. I know I just darkened them back up from lightening them, and this all comes from just messing around with the image, but I really wanted this sky to be darker. So I'm going to just brush this off till I feel like I like it. It also avoids that halo look that's so ugly in images when people are masking off and not quite getting it quite right. So now I'm going to flatten my image again. So fill layer, flatten image. And I've got some banding up here. I'm going to show you my trick for this. Maybe it's the right way, maybe it's not, but I'm going to go over here to the rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to select my sky. So I have it selected what I want to kind of fix the banding on. And I'm going to duplicate what I have selected. So I can do Command J to duplicate it, or I can do layer. Whoops. Let's do Control Z. I don't think I did that right. So I'm going to hit Command J because what it's done is it's duplicated just what I have selected instead of duplicating the entire layer. What's that? Okay, so I'm making sure that this is selected. I'm going to go up to Filter. I'm going to go to Blur and Gaussian Blur. Maybe that's how you say it. And I'm going to watch this and see if this is what I'm... So that's obviously way too much. I'm going to bring it down to where it just starts to fix those bands. So yeah, it's looking good right there. So I'll hit OK. Obviously we need to fix that area. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a layer mask like I've done quite a bit. So I have my layer mask here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to invert the layer mask and turn it black. So I'm going to hit Command I. And I believe I just know it as Command I, so I don't know exactly what. Let's see. I guess you go layer mask. I don't know. But Command I inverts it, so it makes it disappear. And I can hit my brush tool. I'll hit brush, B for brush, or this little guy over here. I'm going to make sure that my brush color is white. So I can either hit X and it'll flip-flop these two colors. And I'm picking white because now my layer mask is black and I want to bring out what I just did. So I'm just going to take it at 100%. So bring my brush opacity up to 100%. And I'm going to paint just kind of over those banded areas. Some people use noise to get rid of this, but I've never really had a whole lot of luck. So I've just stuck, it always happens in skies. So I just stick to what I know. All right, I'm going to flatten it. Let's see. And I like it. I'm happy with it. All right, so here's the before and after again. Obviously, the image was underexposed, overexposed a little bit. Lightroom is such an incredible tool to be able to, and Photoshop too. I use both with every single image I edit. So yeah, presets again, use them. They're a great tool. They're worth their weight in gold. I would happily pay, twice as much as what I paid for some of these because they're what my end result would be without me having to do all the work. I work with the same ones over and over again, so I know what I need to tweak and not tweak, and I'm never just clicking one image and then it's set, it's perfect and ready to go. But yeah, here's the before and after. I hope this helps someone. Again, please, I mean, send me a message. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But yeah, maybe we'll do some more of these. We'll see.